Hello everyone, welcome to Four Downs. As usual, Chris Cusack, Andrew Beaton, Danny Nolan here to break down this weekend's Duke football action. But before we get to Stanford, let's talk about this last weekend. How about that 44-point offensive performance, Andrew?
You know, it was something. Led by the passing attack, 10 catches, 180 yards for Connor Vernon, broke the Duke reception record. But the thing that was most encouraging to me was the running game, especially after watching an anemic rushing offense last year when Duke averaged 3.1 yards per carry, dead last in the ACC. Josh Snead, sophomore redshirt running back last week, he had 2 consecutive rushes of 9 yards. Duke did that once all of last year. He had a 19-yard run. Duke had 7 19-yard runs all of last season. So looking forward to this game against Stanford after Duke had 33 rushing touches for a total of 30 yards last year. That's something Duke needs to improve on to have a shot in this game. But as we know, Chris, Stanford has some offensive weapons of their own.
They do, and even with Andrew Luck gone, obviously the number 1 pick to the Indianapolis Colts in the NFL draft last year, and Kobe Fleener, his big tight end who was an All-American, you still have 2 big tight ends coming back who are the biggest offensive weapons on the Cardinal. You've got Zach Ertz, who's 6'6", and Levine Toilolo, who's 6'8". And these 2 guys are 2 of the 3 best NFL prospects at their positions in the nation. And that'll be a huge matchup against the Duke secondary. And you've also got Stephen Taylor coming back in the backfield. He's a senior. He rushed for 1,330 yards last year and 10 touchdowns. He's going to be a tough one for Duke to stop. And I think the key for Duke is going to be getting into the backfield, getting pressure on the quarterback, and that always starts with Kenny Ananike, who put 2 of the 11 sacks on Andrew Luck that he suffered all of last season.
And of course, that horrible ACL injury that Kenny suffered last year, we're really glad to see him recover and play well, obviously in the 1 game that we've had so far. I think we're about to partake on maybe one of the most important stretches in the Cutcliffe era. Obviously we have this game at Stanford that's going to be very tough. This is a very good team. Despite what happened last weekend against San Jose State, they're going to come out and they're going to perform better this week. After that, the schedule's looking a little easier. We have 2 games at home back-to-back against NC Central and Memphis, both programs that have seen better days, to say the least. Then we have Wake. If there was ever a time for us to break that 12-game losing streak to Wake Forest, this would be the year. I mean, this is a solid team from what we've seen so far. Obviously, there are some injury concerns for Duke, but this could be a very special season, maybe ending in a bowl. Knock on wood. So let's go to 4th down and predictions. Let's start with Andrew. What do you think is going to happen against the Cardinal this weekend?
Everyone sees this being a high-scoring affair. Over-under in Vegas, 60 points right now. I see that, and I just think Stanford really rebounds. Those offensive weapons will be too much for Duke to handle. 42-24. Chris?
I think it's going to be a little closer. I think you have, after last season, you saw that Duke played with Stanford for the entire first half, then had some issues in the kicking game, some momentum swung Stanford's way, and it became a blowout. I think Duke is a better team this year, and Stanford has regressed a little bit. I think it'll be 38-31, something close.
Yeah, I love that score. I was going to say the same thing, but for the sake of making this a little different, I will keep the margin of victory. I'll say 31-24. I still think points are going to be scored. These are both good offenses still, despite losing Andrew Luck for the Cardinal, and obviously Duke showed that they can put points on the board this past weekend. So we have 3 losses for Duke. Obviously would be 1-1 after this weekend. Not too bad considering they are playing the Cardinal at their place in California. So that will do it for 4 Downs. Once again, Chris Cusack, Andrew Beaton, Danny Nolan, and we hope to see you next week.